Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start our Saturday class with prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhuvaswa, Tatsavitravare Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Naha Prachodayat, Asto Ma Sadgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, मृत्योर्मा अमृतम गम्य ओम सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सवीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ओम शांति 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 ओम. We are studying Yog Darshan, Patanjali's Yog Darshan, and we are on chapter 2. And verse number 5 is the one we ended our class with. And we all felt that how beautifully the ignorance or the avidya, which is the root cause of the other afflictions, is explained by or defined by Rishi Patanjali. He said, making short-lived objects for eternity. Impurity as purity. Suffering as happiness. And lack of self-awareness for awareness of oneself. That is avidya. That is ignorance. And you can easily say that this is the anatomy of avidya. All these four categories. And we went in detail in all these four last time. So next, Kalesha is asmita. So now let's look at in verse number 6 how this great Rishi is defining asmita for us. Drigdarshanashaktyorekatmatevasmita asmita. Drig means the seer, the purush. Drig or the perceiver. Darshan, the sight, the seeing or the prakriti. Okay, so one is purush, the other one is prakriti. Drig darshan. Shaktor. Shakti means power or inherent capacity. Shaktor means it's a dual possessive of Shakti. Okay. So power. Ek atma or ek atmataha ev. Ek means one, atmataha, self, ev means like. So apparent oneness of or giving an appearance of two beings the same. Okay, ek atmata ev. Asmita, self-image, self-identity, or I amness. So asmita emerges when the perceiver's power dissolves into the power of perception. So they both have powers, but they just dissolve. And what happens? We have a false identity or a distorted self-image. So remember, asmita is an extension of avidya. If there's no avidya, we'll know who we are all the time. But if there's avidya, then asmita arises. So avidya is a lack of understanding, and it leads to distorted understanding. So lack of self-understanding takes away our basic point of reference. We all know that our core being is pure consciousness. That's why we know intuitively that we exist. But we do not know in what sense we exist. So intrinsic attributes of consciousness tells us that we are But because both our consciousness and intuitive wisdom are enveloped in thick layers of avidya, we do not know the broader context of our being. That means, where did we come from? Where do we exist? Or even where we are going? What our potentials are? Or even what our role in the world is? We are deluded. To discover this broader context, we are dependent on the veil of ignorance. And this dependency is quite confusing as well as frightening. Again, our core being is eternal, intelligent, and immortality and self-illumination are its inherent attributes. And ignorance or the avidya is just the opposite. For avidya to exist, it depends upon the light of the consciousness, which shines from inside out, piercing through the layers of the asmita. And we know that these layers of asmita, some places they are thin, and others they are thick. So the light shining from inside does not illuminate evenly. So this uneven distribution of the inner light gives a unique shape, size, and color to this entity, which is made up of avidya and consciousness. And this is the birth of asmita, I amness. Another way we can understand asmita is as ego. Because at this stage, our self-identity is made up of both vidya and avidya, purush and prakriti. Both of them are intermingled. Neither consciousness knows that the veil illuminated by it is avidya, nor avidya knows that the light illuminating it is consciousness. Because without the light, this prakriti cannot function. So light is there, but we just identify ourselves with the wrong thing. Or you can call it this is a confused self-awareness. That's asmita. In the quieter moment of our contemplation, sure, we feel that who we are. But as soon as we go into that prakriti, we forget again. Whenever we get attached, whenever we get disturbed. So the light flickering deep inside prompts asmita to discover consciousness, the seer within. We want to know who we are. But then avidya prompts asmita to believe that what we see is the seer. There's nothing beyond what we see. So asmita does not let us go towards the deeper layers, but the deep inside, there's always a little churning to know who we are. So the line that keeps subject and object. See, subject is a real us, the essence. Object is everything else. So the line that keeps subject and object distinct has become blurred. And there is nothing to prevent avidya from casting its magic spell on seer and seen, subject and object, perceiver and perceived, causing them to identify with each other. And this is what Rishi Patanjali is saying in this one, that is intermingled. This identification, asmita. Always remember, the stronger the avidya, more blind the asmita. Blinder the asmita, the more insecure we feel. For most people, asmita is deep-rooted affliction. And that is the fundamental source of misery. Remember that. No drugs can take care of it. Yesterday we were talking about the therapy. If the therapist has this knowledge, only then a person can get out of this misery. Otherwise, people keep on going into the cycle again and again and again. Let me repeat it again. Stronger the avidya, the more blind the asmita. Blinder the asmita, the more insecure we feel. And more insecure means more misery. Patanjali calls asmita a force field. This field is made up of two distinct forces, which are so well blended, they cannot be distinguished from each other. One force springs from Purush, the seer, the Atma. Other springs from Prakriti, the object. And also from Buddhi. So it's the object of perception and the instrument of perception. So blending of all this just makes us so confused because we cannot see the separateness. Because interplay of these two forces gives the definition to the individual soul enveloped in ignorance. So asmita, that gives definition to our being. Definitely it's a formless, nameless, all-pervading, eternal, omniscient. That's who we are. But we define ourselves with this limited body, with this confused mind, this small intellect, or something temporary which we have attained. Because we have forgotten that we are limitless. We are nameless. We are all pervading. And we are all one also. We have forgotten that. So our omniscience shrinks to a belief that our life in this world, what we see, the material objects we have acquired, alone are real. Or sometimes we even go to that level, what others call us, what others make us feel, that's what we are. That's how limited we have become. We identify ourselves with our image. Image which is made out of body, mind, values, beliefs, anything and everything that defines our existence. Particular race, particular gender, particular religion which we follow. And we labor to defend our name, fame, power, and prestige. Even the idea that this image might be damaged is frightening to us. And to ensure that this precious self-image is well protected, we begin to build increasingly higher walls around ourselves. It's like a private world which lies inside these walls. Nothing and no one is allowed to enter. Sometimes not even God. Locked inside these walls, we seek freedom. That's how we are cut ourselves off from both the guiding force of Purush, the Atma, and the nourishing force of Prakriti. We want lasting happiness, but how can we have a happiness with these kind of walls where we feel imprisoned? And in the pursuit of happiness, because our inherent nature is happiness and we are drawn towards happiness, so in pursuit of that happiness, we build more walls inside these walls. And those walls are made out of success and failure, gain and loss, honor and insult. They're endless. This is a complex anatomy of asmita. It's almost very perplexing network that has been draining the vitality of our soul from untold ages. Yet the soul never ceases its pursuit of happiness because that's its nature. In this pursuit, most of us fail to pay attention to the transformation of asmita. And what happened for that happiness? We descend into the deeper waters of afflictions. Instead of moving towards the real source, we move towards into the deeper layers of kleshas. Because we want happiness. Nobody does anything other than seeking for happiness. And that's what happened now. Raagah, dveshah, and bhiniveshah. We just move towards that. Remember, it started with the avidya, the ignorance. Then we identified ourselves with something which we are not, asmita. We are looking for a happiness. That is raagah. We get attached. And something which is not pleasurable to us, we want to move away from it. That's dveshah. Let's look at it how Rishi Patanjali is defining raag and dveshah. Verse number 7. Sukhanushayi raagah and dveshah duhkhanushayi dveshah. Sukh means pleasure. Anushayi. Anu means that which follows. Shayi means to reside, to give room to. So anushayi means that which resides in. It's almost like a reservoir or a pool. Raagah, attachment, clinging, craving. And in the next verse, dukh is pain, sorrow, grief. And dvesh is dislike or aversion. So verse number 7, he says, attachment springs from the reservoir of pleasure. And verse number 8, aversion springs from the reservoir of sorrow. So remember the last verse, asmita is the essence of I amness, the very ground of our existence. So asmita clings to the notion of whatever we come to identify as our core being. And we get so confused. Actually, in the scriptures, they talk about a confused person like a blind man. It's a very famous way of explaining this confused person with a high level of asmita. How does he behave? When a blind man is led to an elephant and happens to explore the animal's tail, He's thrilled. He insists on the basis of his direct experience that elephant looks like a rope. Another blind man, he discovers elephant's leg. To him, elephant is like a big pillar. A third blind person happens to touch the ear. He is certain that elephant is like a big fan. And then another person touches elephant's side, and he proclaims that the creature is like a high, thick wall. And all of them are adamant about their positions, and they are convinced of their validity of their experience, and none is willing to consider any other possibility. This is the power of self-understanding that lacks a vision of truth. And that's what Patanjali called it, asmita. So asmita is not to be confused with the mere ego. Asmita is the essence of I amness, the very ground of our existence. So it refers to our limited, distorted, and incomplete sense of being, just like these blind men. So asmita clings to the notion of whatever we come to identify our own core being. So it does not want to let go. And this clinging is a raagah, attachment. Because we find comfort, even though it is a small part, but we want to, just like those blind person who touched the ear, got happiness that I know how elephant looks like. It's a fan. Got happiness from it and got attached to it. That's raagah. Because pleasure comes from holding on to asmita. There is a sense of accomplishment in seeing this notion expand and be recognized by others. I am a great speaker, or a great painter, or a great singer, or a good mother. All of that is asmita. Great planner, great walker. So many ways we just keep on identifying ourselves, and the more we identify with that, the further we go away from the truth. There is a sense of accomplishment in seeing this notion expand and be recognized by others also. We want others to put a stamp on it too. It's not just only our happiness, we want others to sign it off too. Even the slightest indication that someone or something is damaging this notion is very frightening to us. Even if we hear that somebody said that about us, we don't even know whether that's true or not. It's frightening. We suffer from anticipating the loss of that which is so dear to us. So the desire to stop the possibility of this loss is natural, and the failure to stop it results in anger. This anger-driven thought construct is called dveshah, aversion. It's a vritti. So in other words, this is what I am is asmita. Remember that. This is what I am. This is what I want to be, is raagah, attachment. This is what I don't want to be, is dveshah, aversion. The fear that our asmita might be altered or destroyed is an affliction, klesha. The fear that I may lose my precious asmita is an affliction. And the fear that someone may take it away from me, that's also an affliction. In an attempt to escape from this affliction, we normally resort to yet another affliction, avidya, where we experience a false sense of freedom from all other afflictions. And Rishi Patanjali takes us to the next level. Svarasavahi, vidushopi, tatharoodho, bhiniveshah. This is the fifth affliction. Svarasavahi. Swa means one's own. Ras means essence, juice, ras. Vahi, the one who carries. So this means that which carries its own essence. Or another way you can understand, which carries its own subtle memories. Svarasavahi. Vidushopi, a learned person, a wise person. Vidusha. Api means even, tatha means in that manner. Ruda, that which is riding or located in. Bhiniveshah. This is again a complex word. Abhi means from every direction. Ni means completely. Vesh means piercing, penetrating. So which has penetrated every living being from all around, in every respect. And a common definition of the meaning of abhinivesha means death and the fear of death. Because both death and the fear of death has penetrated us all. Abhinivesha. Fear of death carries its own essence and predominates even the wise. Even the wise. Vidushopi. Ours is a death-averse culture. To a medical practitioner, death means defeat. For most of us, death is an enemy. Some people don't even like to talk about it. Because we know death conquers life. It takes away everything what we have gathered. But to a yogi, death is a fact. It comes with birth, accompanies us while we are alive, and harvests life without fail, just as a farmer harvests his crops. Yogis call it abhinivesh, that which has penetrated the very core of our being. It's a fact. That's why there's no one in the world who's not afraid of death, according to Rishi Patanjali. The knowledge of the pain pertaining to death is self-evident. Even a tiny insect, you try to grab it, it wants to run away. Wants to protect its life. No creature needs to be taught about clinging to life and escaping death. This innate tendency to cling to life pervades every living creature. And why death is so painful? Because we believe that at the time of death, everything will be left behind. The body we cherish so deeply will be gone. It will be burned or buried. At death, we will lose our loved ones, as well as our money, power, prestige, honor, and dignity. And the idea of losing all gives us identity, which is very terrifying. And this fear is the root cause of pain and is virtually incurable. And that is why Rishi Patanjali called this fear of death as an affliction, a klesh. And the goal of yoga is to attain freedom from the seemingly incurable affliction of the fear of death. So with the yoga abhyas, we need to overcome this fear. Because normally we see toddlers hide by closing their eyes. But this does not prevent them from being seen. The same way, dismissing thoughts of death and occupying ourselves with the charms and distractions of the world does not free us from the fear of death. So not talking about it, not thinking about it, not reading about it is not going to save us. Death annihilates our body. Death separates us from our loved ones. Death nullifies our claims to our worldly possessions. But a yogi guru tells us death does not kill our soul. The sooner we start to identify ourselves with the soul, the sooner we will become free of this affliction. Death does not kill our soul. It does not destroy our mind either. Our subtle body is going to go with the soul. It does not separate us from our likes and dislikes. Those instincts are going to go with us as long as we have a mind. And it does not nullify our habits either. The habits which we have cultivated, they will accompany us. So we got to remember, what are we taking with us? We got to leave the body. We got to leave this physical world. But what we are taking with us, shouldn't we pay more attention to that? Shouldn't we clean up that part of our personality, which is going to go with us, instead of worrying about it or being afraid of death? So why are we afraid of dying? Very few people examine this. We are just frightened by death. We don't think about it. This pervasive fear has its roots in our lack of understanding that there is something more precious than our bodies, or even more precious than our loved ones, or so-called loved ones, and our worldly possessions. Freedom of the soul is infinitely more valuable than the short-lived comforts of our flesh. Think about it. Our loved ones will remain loved ones only when our mind has been made calm and tranquil and filled with unconditional love. Worldly possessions, they come and go. What do not pass away so easily are our habits, including the habit of being fearful of death. From countless lives, we have been afraid of death, and that habit is continuing. In our scriptures, they say that a living person with fear dies again and again while still alive. That is an affliction. Even though we die at the end of this life, but every day we are afraid, we are dying. So that's why the practice is given in this chapter, because this chapter is called a Sadhana Pad. It started out giving us the Kriya Yoga. Those are the practices. Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishwar Pranidhan, that is a Kriya Yoga. If we practice that, the freedom from fear will come. And then what happens is, he will tell us in the next two verses, they are little deeper verses, and I will touch upon those or explain next week, that when does the meditation helps? When does the samadhi helps? When does this contemplation helps? How to really use all this to get rid of this fear? So we'll start next week with verse number 10, where he says, Te pratipasva heya sukshmaha. Heya, here means avoided, destroyed. Then in the number 11, he says, Dhyan heya tad vrityaha. So dhyan is meditation. So we'll talk about that, because he tells us very clearly, very systematically, scientifically, how to use all this, how to do the sadhana, so that you can get rid of these afflictions, klesha, because we got to make sure that these kleshas are minimized in this lifetime. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.